Well, good morning, everybody. I'm Don Stewart, and welcome to another edition of Breaking News. Today is Sunday. It's the 25th day of August, 2024. We're coming at you about 4:40 in the morning from the state of California here in the United States to give you the latest on what happened early this morning in Israel and last night in the United States, our time, and bring you up to date with where we're at right at this moment. All right, hundreds of Israeli jets destroyed thousands of Hezbollah targets in a preemptive strike. That was early on Sunday morning, Israeli time. Israeli intelligence countered Hezbollah's plans because they knew what was going on and prevented a regional war so far. So let's give you the latest and tell you where we're at. All right, headline number one: Israeli fighter jets hit thousands of Hezbollah targets in a preemptive strike on Lebanon. Hezbollah announced that it had launched an attack on Israel in retaliation for the killing of Fuad Shukr in Beirut. The IDF and Hezbollah entered a new, much more dangerous phase of the conflict in the north early Sunday morning, with hundreds of Air Force jets striking thousands of Hezbollah rocket platforms. With Israeli intelligence observing that Hezbollah was about to launch its largest attack of the current war, including to Tel Aviv and central Israel areas. This is the key. Around 5 a.m., the IDF preemptively and independently struck targets where Hezbollah was on the verge of firing against Israel. Netanyahu, Prime Minister Netanyahu and Defense Minister Gallant approved the preemptive action against Hezbollah at IDF headquarters on Saturday night, and we're bringing together the security cabinet around 7 a.m. on Sunday morning. Now, remember the story we had on our second edition of Breaking News yesterday, where we said there was a war that's going to be imminent, an imminent attack was warned from the Israeli authorities there on late Saturday night after the end of the Shabbat, the Sabbath, that they're expecting the next few days. Well, they knew what's going to take place the next morning, so they're warning the people to be prepared. Netanyahu told the security cabinet that this morning we detected Hezbollah's preparations to attack Israel. In consultation with the Minister of Defense and the Chief of Staff, we instructed the IDF to act proactively to remove the threat. The IDF has since been working vigorously to thwart such threats. It's destroyed thousands of rockets aimed at the north of the country, and it has also thwarted many other threats and operates with great power, both defensively and offensively. So basically, hundreds of Israeli jets destroy thousands of Hezbollah targets. That's the first headline. Headline number two: Israeli intelligence countered Hezbollah's plans and prevented a regional war. And that's where we're at right now. The IDF's preventive strike, this is from Ynet News, an Israeli site. The IDF's preemptive strike on Hezbollah rocket launchers prevented thousands of munitions from reaching Tel Aviv and from striking northern Israel. Early intelligence indications from the IDF's Military Intelligence Directorate about Hezbollah's extensive preparations for a strike on Israel, including the center of the country, prevented potentially severe damage and a possibility of significant casualties during the terror group's attack on Sunday. The warning sounded after information from Israeli intelligence enabled the IDF to carry out this preventive strike of thousands of rocket launchers of various types in Lebanon, which were intended to target strategic military sites in central Israel, including the Gush Dan region. Following this, the IDF intercepted drones that were en route from Lebanon to southern Israel, intended to strike the targets in central Israel. In total, about 300 some odd drones were launched, 350 drones, missiles were launched towards Israel. But again, what was stopped were thousands upon thousands of rockets that were being prepared to launch. There's no indication yet, and here's what's interesting, of reports saying Hezbollah intended to target the runways at Ben Gurion Airport, but foreign reports suggest this was one of the terror group's targets, along with a few other IDF bases in the central region. In any case, their preventive strike disrupted Hezbollah's plans to launch a combined rocket and drone attack. And this is interesting, on the holy Shia day of Arba'in, which commemorates the martyrdom of Imam Hussein in the Battle of Karbala. This event in the Shia world is comparable to that of Tisha B'Av in Judaism, and Hezbollah likely aimed to carry out its attack on this day to achieve surprise, assuming Israel wouldn't expect an attack on a Shia holy day, which would disrupt the holiday for most of Lebanon's Shia population. Hezbollah needed to reposition its missiles and rocket launchers in a way that advanced them to southern Lebanon, in other words, moving now from the north down to the south, to shorten Israel's warning time during such an attack and in order to strike targets in the central part of the country with heavier rockets than those typically stationed in southern Lebanon. Hezbollah was preparing for a combined attack of rockets and strike drones, and the IDF preemptively struck. What they did not only destroyed these assets, but also disrupted, this is key, disrupted the attack timeline. A coordinated attack of rockets and drones requires precise synchronization between the slower moving drones and the faster ballistic rockets. Now, what were their targets? Overall, it appears that Hezbollah intended to operate primarily in the north, that's the north of Israel, to avoid sparking a regional war that might have erupted if it had launched a widespread attack in the central region. Here's the however. However, the terrorist organization attempted to maintain the equation by its leader Hassan Nasrallah, saying that an attack on Beirut, where Israel recently eliminated Fuad Shukr, effectively started this war. Hezbollah's chief of staff this led to a response in Tel Aviv, and that's seemingly where they were aiming. Yet, according to reports, the number of targets chosen in the central region were limited and included only military targets. Now, we're getting different stories on this because we know some civilian places were hit at the border. They were targeted. Some of the civilian sites in Kiryat Shmona, Metula, and some of the places on the border between Israel and Lebanon. So it seems the clear intention, though, is since there's basically military targets, likely influenced by Iranian demands, was to avoid a full-scale war. And they mentioned another interesting fact that Hezbollah opened fire from southern Lebanon alone. Now, this is very important. Why? Because they didn't attack from the Beirut and Baalbek regions, which are further north, because this is where their heavy missiles are, the ones that are real sophisticated, the ones that could do so much damage. They were not part of the attack. They were not planned to be part of the attack. They're further north. Okay, they can go further. They can do much more damage. They've kept them in reserve. They did not plan on using them right now in this initial phase. The Iranians appear to want Hezbollah to avoid risking these heavy and precise missile systems, which would be necessary if Israel to strike Iran's nuclear facilities. In other words, they're saving this for Israel's future attack on Iran. If they attack the nuclear facilities there with any might and power in the future in Iran, they've got these missiles now further up north in Lebanon, these very powerful ones held in reserve, and they did not use those now. It's seemingly going to wait to use them if and when Israel does attack, Iran sometime. So here's the question: what comes next? The current escalation status remains unclear. Hezbollah claimed this morning launches were just the first phase of its attack that had struck 11 targets in the north with approximately 320 launches. The damage in the north was not severe, and in this initial stage, according to the terrorist organization, no Israelis were killed by Hezbollah fire. Some injuries were reported from debris, but they're at a minimum. So here's where we're at. The next steps will be determined by the Security Cabinet, that's Israel's Security Cabinet, considering the ongoing negotiations for a hostage deal that are currently Israel's top priority. Another crucial factor is the unequivocal American demand that Israel avoid any action that could ignite a regional war. Lame duck U.S. President Joe Biden's administration doesn't want to get involved in a conflict that might require strikes on Iran and lead to a prolonged war. Why? Well, because it's so close to the presidential elections in the U.S. So it's a political consideration here, obviously. These two considerations are critical. To alleviate American concerns, Washington was notified well in advance that Israel intended to carry out a preemptive strike to thwart Hezbollah's attack. Consequently, the White House statements were in line with this, mainly expressing support for Israel and the right to defend itself. Now, it goes on to say the article, they haven't given up on a hostage release deal and a ceasefire. Good luck with that. But as again they say, the chances are slim that any breakthrough will happen, as we saw this Saturday, that Hamas rejected any deal that the latest Israel proposal about keeping troops at the Philadelphia corridor, and they don't see any near-term deal. So again, it's quite possible Hezbollah's decision was a response to the declaration that the negotiations had hit a dead end. So they hit a dead end, and like they said, well, now we've got okay to fire. We're not messing up any ceasefire that's going to happen immediately. So negotiations for a hostage deal will continue, but it seems to be, fruitless what will happen. Israel is preparing for the possibility that Hezbollah will attempt to compensate for its failure with another day or two of fighting. We just don't know this. But here's the dilemma. The dilemma facing officials is how to prevent a situation where Israel enters into a tense and fearful period of awaiting an attack where Hezbollah might view as a second or third phase in its revenge strike. They have more sophisticated missiles they haven't used, so Israel needs to do something to keep that from happening. One option is for Israel to tell Lebanon that any further attempt to launch a retaliatory strike against it will automatically trigger a full-scale war by Israel against Lebanon. Of course, such a declaration would need to be coordinated with the U.S., and most importantly, the government must be prepared to back up such diplomatic declarations with actions. In any case, the article concludes Israel mustn't allow Hezbollah to keep it in a state of readiness and uncertainty as it has in recent weeks and in the slightly longer term. The situation in which the North is subjected to a war of attrition and continuous attacks must be brought to an end. And as we conclude, yes, it must. As to how it will happen, we just have to wait and see. So that's the latest right now. We'll see if there's any more attacks from Hezbollah today on Israel or attempted attacks, and we're bringing the latest as necessary. So it's a time to pray. We're at least thankful that this regional war did not break out. It seemed like it was going to. We were watching live, my wife and I. There was a program we got to see. I don't know how we found it, where they had cameras on southern Lebanon, northern Israel, right at the border, also on Tel Aviv. And the sounds of the rockets and the blasts were horrific there. And we thought, oh, no, here we go. Fortunately, that ended with Israel doing what it needed to do with hundreds of planes and thousands of rocket launchers being destroyed. But again, the arsenal here that is in Lebanon is huge for Hezbollah, so we don't know how many more they could bring out and try this all over again. So we're in just a waiting and seeing period. So in the short term, we don't know what's going to happen. Now, of course, as we talk here every day on breaking news in the long term, we know exactly what's going to happen. The Bible has told us about the events that will precede the second coming of Jesus Christ, and there's a lot of big events that are still to take place, and the stage is being set for that as we document here every day, as we have done in our books on our website, Educating Our World, including 25 signs we're near the end, that's found under the subject of Bible prophecy. All right, that's the latest for this morning. Again, it's about a little before 5 o'clock a.m. here on the West Coast. If something happens that deserves us to break in, we will do it again. Until then, as always, keep praying, and may the Lord, as always, richly, richly bless you.